So shalom everyone, and welcome to today's program of the Ghetto Fighters House International Online Series Talking Memory. Today's program, Polish-Jewish Relations through the lens of the camera, director Slawomir Grunberg in conversation with Liat Steir-Livny. My name is Medin Shachar, and I work at the Ghetto Fighters House as a guide and educator, and I want to welcome our global audience once again from all over the world, including friends and colleagues from Holocaust museums, institutions and centers, academics and students, from universities, historians, and our many, many friends who attend our Talking Memory series. A special welcome, as always, to the survivors and their families that are with us today. We wanted to thank everyone for their support and interest in our programs. Today's program is in partnership with Classrooms Without Borders, and is the first of a two-part series with the award-winning director, producer, and cinematographer, Slawomir Grunberg. But I would like to introduce our guests. Slawomir Grunberg is an award-winning director, producer, and cinematographer of documentary films. As a graduate of the directing department of the Lodz Film School, he immigrated to the USA in 1981 and has since directed and produced over 45 documentaries concerning critical social, environmental, and political issues. Winner of numerous international awards, including an Emmy Award for School Prayer, A Community at War. He has also won a Guggenheim Foundation Fellowship and the New York Foundation for the Arts and Social Justice Media Fellowship. His latest film that was released just in March, Still Life in Lodz, has already received rave reviews. Ben Kenigsberg from the New York Times wrote in his review, "The individual stories are powerful, as are the visual comparisons between present day and historical locations. A few animated sequences effectively evoke the evanescence of memory." As well, a new book has been released, Slawomir Grunberg, A Man with a Camera, by Barbara Grunberg. The book is a collection of thematic sequences which describe the process of searching for his own identity, childhood memories, youth, education, and family life. Slawomir talks about his mentors and brings to life memories from his travel with a camera while working on many documentaries. All of this is enriched by the statements of his family and friends and is illustrated by many photographs. And I will put a link to order the book. It's available both in English and in Polish. And now we are happy to have back Liat Steir-Livny, who is an associate professor in the Department of Culture at Sapir Academic College and a tutor and course coordinator for the Cultural Studies MA program in the Department of Literature, Language, and the Arts at the Open University of Israel. Her research focuses on Holocaust commemoration in Israel from the 1940s until present. It combines Holocaust studies, memory studies, cultural studies, trauma studies, and film studies. She is the author of many articles and 5 books, including Remaking Holocaust Memory, documentary cinema by third-generation survivors in Israel that was released in 2019 by Syracuse University Press. In 2019, she also won the Young Scholar Award given jointly by the Association for Israel Studies and the Israel Institute. And without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to our guests today. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Madine. Thank you, Slawomir, for being here and talking to us. And to our guests who came to hear you, I would say that we're not only going to talk to you and hear you talk about your film and about your life, but also watch some clips from your films. You are so productive that we can't show all films, but we can show several clips from your work along the years, and we're going to talk about it later. So first of all, and I don't usually start like that, but I would like to say a great thank you for all your work over the years. I'm a great believer in films. I'm a greater believer in documentaries. And I think that what you've done over the years serves the Jewish people in a tremendous way. And I think it's so important that I wanted to express my thank you to you. I think it's a great gift for us educators and a great way to approach our students and to introduce very difficult topics to them. And for that, I thank you. So before we dive into your films, I would like to ask you a few questions about your childhood. Please tell us, where were you born and where did you grow up? And let's begin by that.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Madine. Thank you, Liat, for introduction. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you, everyone, for coming to listen and watch the presentation. I was born in Lublin, Poland, But shortly after that, I moved to Warsaw. I spent most of my life in Warsaw, except 5 years in Łódź, where I studied at the film school, which I graduated in 1981. And since then, my life moved to United States. I left Poland in November of 1981 with a film which was invited by MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, but the film was never shown because never left Poland. It was a political film about solidarity, about Anna Walentynovich, one of the leaders of the strike in Gdańsk shipyard. So that's in short my life. And then a year and a half ago, me and my wife, we moved to Mexico. So this is where I am right now, talking to you from beautiful southwest Mexico.
And earlier he told us about the dolphins and the whales that surround him. So I think he chose wisely. So please tell us, what did you first hear about the Holocaust? What was your first encounter with the Holocaust?
I was educated in Poland in the 60s. This is when I went to elementary school and high school. We did trips to Oświęcim. That's how it was called at that time. Auschwitz was not a name used at all in Poland and at school. So we would go there. We heard about all the victims, and there were victims who were Polish, Jewish, Hungarians, you name it. The word Holocaust was never used at that time, and the stress wasn't on the tragedy of Jews. It was about Polish people, Jewish descent, and Polish people who were victims of Nazi crime. That's what I learned at school. So it took some time before I realized that the real truth was hidden, and we were given the nationalistic Polish version of the reality.
Right. And in a way, your films are an answer to this educational system. And I would like to show a short clip of the film Castaway. So can you please just tell our viewers a bit about the film so they can understand the scene that we're about to see?
Castaway is a short film. It's 18 minutes film, which I did with my colleague Wiśniewski, Tomek Wiśniewski. We did it together, co-directed. He came with an idea for the film. I re-edited, added a little bit of animation, and the story is of the town Łapy, which is on the way from Białystok to Treblinka. This is where Jews were transported through this town Łapy, and in Łapy the train would slow down. In the last transport, where Jews from Białystok already knew about Treblinka, they knew that they are going to death. Mothers, families decided to save children, and they would throw out children through openings in the wagons, or they tried to make openings. So when the train slowed down in Łapy, because there was some kind of change of crew, then they were trying to save children. And the story is told by 7 witnesses, elderly Polish people who lived in Łapy and who remember these situations.
Okay, so let's see scene.
To był lipiec, sierpień, bo tak te miesiące to z Białegostoku likwidowali te getto i wszystkie do Treblinki wywozili.
Jak to jechały te pociągi, ja uciekałam jak najdalej gdzieś.
Żydzi wyrzucali swoje dzieci.
A oni wiedzieli, że oni jadą na stratę.
Chcieli, żeby ktoś żywy został jeszcze. Bo tu chodziło o świadków tego, co Niemcy robili z Żydami.
Kiedyś było właśnie taki dzień, że Żydówka wyrzuciła przez to okienko swoje dziecko.
No i oni poprzecinali te druty, włazili w te okienka, a z tyłu ich popychali.
Mnie się wydaje, że jednak Żydzi, znaczy rodziny tych dzieciaków liczyły na to, że ten dzieciak może przeżyje.
Okay. I have to ask you, we are all well aware of what's happening in Poland nowadays and the debate about the Polish people and the deconstruction of this term bystanders. And you've met a lot of people in your cinematic journeys. You've met a lot of non-Jewish locals who talk to you about the war and about other things. What do you make of it as somebody who was there and talked to the people themselves?
What do I make of it? First of all, let me tell you, maybe viewers will be interested to know that out of about 20 children who were thrown out from this train, only one survived, and actually she's still alive and lives in Łape. At the same time, she refused to talk to the camera, and this is very, very typical situation, I would say. During filming, I met a lot of both Polish people who saved Jews and those who were saved, and still live in Poland. And it was very difficult to get any information from them. Poles were afraid of their neighbors. Still in 20, 30, 40 years after the war, they were afraid to talk because they were thinking what will happen if the neighbors, if their family even would hear the stories how they saved Jews. So this is sad, but this is real picture of what was happening in Poland. And the fact that Poles were not only victims but also at time perpetrators is very important information, which shows up in my films and challenge the self-perception of Poles and their memory of the war, especially today with the Polish government, which is pretty much nationalistic government, who is trying to tell just a different version of the historical facts.
And this narrative that you bring to the forefront is so important. So can you pinpoint the moment where you decided that you're going to invest so much of your work in the Holocaust, in the faith of the Jewish people? Was there a significant moment when you told yourself, this is it, or did it just happen?
I think it progressed. The first time I really got interested in making films on the Jewish topic was after I watched Shoah by Claude Lanzmann. This was in 1987, I think, or 86, in which I watched it in the movie theater, and 9 hours. It really made a huge impact on me. And then later on, I worked on several films with Marian Marzeński. One film, particularly Ghetto, which took 3 years to make. This is 1996. It really opened my eyes. It was the beginning of my interest in the Holocaust subject and the subject of Polish-Jewish relationship. There was another film I did at the same time, which was called Diamonds in the Snow. And this is Mira Binford's film, her story, how she survived as a Jewish child in Będzin, Poland. So starting from that time, when I was a cameraman for both films, my interest into making my own documentaries which deal with Polish-Jewish relationships started.
Can you tell us a bit about Shtetl, because I want to show a clip of the film?
Yes, this was three years adventure. Myself and Marian Marzinski would go to one town, one small town, Brańsk, which is on the eastern part of Poland. And three people who came, or three Jews living in the United States who were from Brańsk, would visit Brańsk while we were filming the story. And it talks about how one man, a Polish historian in Brańsk, who tried to save Jewish cemetery, how he confronts the reaction of Polish people in town, at the same time how he confronts those who are coming from the United States to meet the past, which they remember.
Okay, so let's see a scene. A minute.
Looking for the old-timers, Jack meets a man who remembers the Jews.
Przywożę ja do niego sarny. No. Myśmy kupili i sardę, zający. Dara, ja panu wytłumaczę. Tak. Więc to, koziołek, znaczy obliczył jego na 10 zł. Tak, tak. Więc ja się zgadzam i mu oddać ten koziołka. Ale coś sobie pomiędzy sobą pogadali i mówią tak do mnie. Ty wiesz co, ja ci więc nie dam 8 zł. To była moja sprawa, nie.
Poprawdę, przepraszam, poprawdę powiedząc.
8 zł. Ja mówię tak, słuchajcie, zgodzone 10, to już płaccie 10.
Jak ojciec powiedział słowo, to nie tylko 2 złote, żeby było 1000 złotych.
Nie,
i później by było warto 100 złotych. Ojca słowo było wiadomo nie tylko w Brańsku.
Więc ja się zgodziłem i na te 8 złotych, no powiedziałem.
Bardzo ciężko tego słuchać.
Ciężko słuchać, ale...
Że ojciec się zgodził 10 złotych i później dał tylko 8.
Tak.
Listening to the old-timer, I find myself thinking about the roots of anti-Semitism. I imagine an argument like this one, erupting hundreds of years ago, when the first Jews settled in small Polish towns.
Okay. Now I would like to talk a bit about the role of animation in your film, because you are a big fan of animation and intertwining animation within documentary films, which I believe enriches the films and give it this extra layer. So can you please talk about it, and especially about the wonderful film Karski and the Lords of Humanity?
Yes, I decided to introduce animation to this film, which has a lot of archival footage, Holocaust archival footage. And this was a reason why it took me 7 years to make this film, because nobody believed that this can be done, that this can be effective. I got so many rejections from different institutions, both in the United States and Poland. But I was convinced that it will work. I decided to do it against all odds. Words with Bashir was my inspiration, a documentary, a film, Israeli film, which most of you probably have seen, fully animated film. So I decided to do it. It was a success. At the end, everybody applauded me for doing this. And why? Of course, you know, we have a lot of footage which doesn't exist. I mean, we have a lot of memories which would like to put into film, which doesn't exist in the archival footage, especially in this case when Jan Karski was telling stories which he remembered. There was no way to illustrate this differently than through animation. Of course, you could do reenactment, which I didn't like to do. And talking head is another option, which is quite boring. So adding animation because of lack of the footage is one reason. Another reason is that it puts film on a different artistic level. You may think at the beginning that animation and documentary don't work together, that they are kind of opposite media, but at the end, when you start to watch it, it actually works, and it works perfectly, and it gives you additional sense of reality. It puts you into poetic mode, and I'm a big fan of using animation in documentary. I did it also in this new film, Still Life in Łódź. In a Karski movie, Tomek Niedźwiedź from studio Buddy Buddy was the director of animation. And in Still Life in Łódź, it was different group, Marcin Podolec from Tapir Studio in Łódź. Interesting story is that when I worked on a Karski film, I lived in the United States and my animators lived in different places of the world. I had no idea who are those people behind animation. I met them at the premiere of the film at the Polin Museum, first time. This is when I learned that there was so many of them doing different parts of drawings. One was in London, one was in Amsterdam. Most of them were in Poland, in Warsaw, in Gdańsk. So the world of animation was totally unknown to me before Karski movie, and now I'm kind of specialist, and I even did my thesis, PhD thesis on using animation in documentary film.
Now all you have to do is translate it to English. So all of us can enjoy it. I still wait. I want to show you a trailer and then a minute of a clip from the film, which is magnificent. So first the trailer, just a minute.
When you describe them, what is happening to the Jews, they will not believe you. What would help our cause if you, with your own eyes, see the situation in the Warsaw Ghetto? I couldn't take anymore, but I reported. We have a choice. We can choose to be robbers, we can choose to be good people. Now I go back 35 years. No, I don't go back, you know. It's not good.
If you find yourself in a circumstance, whatever it is, you can do something to make a difference. Let Karski's story be one of those that inspires you to try.
So that was the trailer, and I want to show you just one more minute.
At a certain point, the Jews started to run away. I didn't know what happened. The guide says, let's go, let's go. We entered some house, knocked at the door, opened the door. We are Jews. He goes with me to the window. And then I saw horrible thing. Two boys, Hitler Jugend, laughing, joyfully, walking. At a certain point, one of the boys takes a gun from his pocket and shoots. Some window glass broken, some voice, ah! So I was paralyzed. Then a Jewish woman Probably she recognized me. I don't know that I'm not a Jew. She embraced me. Go, go. It doesn't do you any good. Go.
Okay. So we can see here this extra layer animation brings, and the way it brings to life the past. And Jan Karski, of course, is such an impressive person. And from one impressive person to the other, you've made a film about Shimon Redlich, who's a well-known historian. He's a Holocaust survivor, and he's somebody I really like. And this wonderful film is called Shimon's Return, and it has so many great scenes within it. So can you please tell us, why did you decide to choose Shimon, and the way you followed him on his journey back to his hometown?
Yes, I met Shimon in Ashkelon, I believe. This is the place where Polish Jews who left in 1968 meet every 3 years, and he was one of the speakers there. And I went to listen to his story. He wrote several books, and then later we talked, and I realized that he is a great character, to be a character of the film. Not only a great character, because he's very funny, but also he's just a great guy. And on the top of this, which is always very interesting to a documentary film, he already was an actor in the film Unsere Kinder, which was the last Yiddish film shot in Poland in 1948. So we already had him, 50 years earlier. Now he's back to the same place, to the same orphanage where the film was shot. And imagine one of the first days of shooting were with Shimon in the orphanage, which is shown in the Unsere Kinder. And there's a guy with a horse wagon, and he approaches us, and he tells to Shimon, "I remember you from the time when you were at this orphanage." I mean, this is like incredible beginning, and he really remembered him because he gave details. So I think in this little clip, which you may show, there's this scene which I love, and he's the guy. Shimon is a serious historian, but at the same time, he can sing, can dance, he can approach people on the street, ask them questions, and he does it with a smile in his face, and everything works perfectly. So he's like born actor, and very sympathetic character. He was saved by both Ukrainian and Polish families, which also adds to the film. Typically, we talk about Jews who were saved by Polish family. Here, he was saved by Ukrainian family on the top of being saved by Polish family. So that's why. And we're still, myself and my wife Basha, we're still very close with Shimon. Whenever we were in Israel, we go to Modin and use his Modin apartment as our hotel place.
Oh.
Don't tell anyone that
he is a lovely guy. Okay, let's watch the clip here.
Czy pan pamięta ten dom dziecka?
Ja pana pamiętam.
Pana?
No.
Mnie pan pamięta?
Another memory of Helenuvek is being filmed in Helenuvek for Unsere Kinder, the Yiddish-speaking film. Although I was acting as a child survivor, I never connected between my real Holocaust story and the scenario which I was given
Бідне по селі втікали. Навіть кордоні без нашого, без ті втікали до гори.
До гори?
Так, до ліса. Били їх, тут навіть тут вбивали їх.
Тут, на цьому місці, теж на Раєві?
Так.
Народ знає, що то єврейський кура, чи український, чи який. Не кров, пам'ятаєш, що є кров людська.
Okay, so this last man said that blood is blood, and that brings us to the Jedwabne film. When Jan Thomas Gross published his book Neighbors, the whole world went into turmoil, and then you directed a film about it. So can you please tell us a bit about Jedwabne?
Yeah, it was a turning point in my filmmaking on stories about Polish-Jewish relationship. I did this film because I really wanted to tell the story. I read the book in 2000, but what happened a couple years earlier, I received an email from a lawyer who is one of those involved in, whose grandparents were in Jedwabne, and he was involved in researching the story. And he sent me email 2 years before the book telling me about the story, what Shmuel Wasserstein from Costa Rica discovered that Polish people in Jedwabne put all Jews and burned them in the barn. And I read this, I remember a couple of years before the book, and I couldn't believe it. I said, it's crazy, it couldn't be true. And I did nothing about this. I still have this email. And then there was a book, and there was a documentary by Polish television. And I said to myself, I have to tell the story. The Legacy of Jedwabne is the title of the film. It took me 5 years to make the film. I didn't have any funding. No one gave me any money to produce it. I got only rejections from any institutions I applied for. They said it's too sad story, it cannot be, it's too controversial. My father, who was a historian with the topic of Second World War, who wrote over 30 books on World War II, he told me, don't touch this subject, it's too controversial, you will have all the troubles because of the film. But I did it, I wanted to make this, I want to tell the story. I told the world about what happened. And what I accomplished, what I'm very proud of, is that I was able to reach 3 of the 7 survivors who lived in Argentina and Buenos Aires. And I went there and I interviewed them. Those 3 were saved by Mrs. Wyrzykowska, Polish lady who saved 7 Jews in Jedwabne, but no one talked to those who were in Argentina, and that's I look at the film and I look at this experience as the most important thing what happened, because they were eyewitness who told the story, and you cannot say it didn't happen when you have eyewitness stories.
You know, Jan Thomas Gross himself said that when he read Shmuel Wasserstein's testimony, he could not believe it. He didn't believe it, and it took him some time to process it and to write the book.
W Jedwabnym o wszystkich dziennikarzach mówią Żydzi, bo Żyd to jest w kulturze ludowej kojarzy się z obcym. Momenty, kiedy czuję, że moja tożsamość jest żydowska. I to jest właśnie w Jedwabnym, kiedy mam cały czas to poczucie, że no niezależnie od tego, jakbym się nie czuła Polką, to moje dzieci byłyby spalone w stodole.
Jeżeli ktoś tak jak pani uratował 7 osób od śmierci.
Tak. I teraz trzeba się bać za to. No to co pan zrobi? Trzeba się bać.
Dlaczego się trzeba bać?
Boże, a skąd ja wiem, dlaczego się słyszy mowy ludzkie? Że nie jest to dla ludzi na dobre, tylko na złe, tylko...
Nie możemy mieć wątpliwości. Tu w Jedwabnem obywatele Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej zginęli z rąk innych obywateli Rzeczypospolitej. Ludzie ludziom, sąsiedzi sąsiadom zgotowali ten los.
Okay, so we have only several minutes left, and we have so many clips, but we have to choose. So I would like to tell you that Slawomir, who apparently never sleeps, is currently working on 5 films simultaneously, all deal with various aspects of the Holocaust and the Jewish people, fascinating topics. And Slawomir can tell us all about it, and we can even see a clip from one film which is still in the making, right?
Yeah, we can, it's correct. This is the film Hidden Heritage, a film about discovering Jewish roots in Krakow. Film I started several years ago. Now, because of COVID, I continue filming and editing from here. Actually, today, this morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I woke up because we had a shoot at the Jewish cemetery in Warsaw with our main character, Zosia Hartman, and her father. They were at graves of their family who was buried there a long time ago. So this is the new film. Judy Boss is the executive producer of the film. We hope to have it finished in a year and a half. Still looking for funding for post-production, but most of the footage is already there. During last 3 months, we had several different filming in Poland, in Wrocław and Krakow. So it can be done even during the COVID time. Actually, I would say it's much more productive because you can do much more not traveling to the place, having the right crew, the right people working for you.
And this film has some kind of an optimistic perspective, I would say.
Which one, the film or me?
Yeah, both.
Both, yes, of course. Yeah, I'm always optimistic. There's another film which is almost finished. It's called Good Jews. This is film where elder Polish people talk about sympathy and nostalgia which they have to the life which is gone, to the life with Jews. And in this film, I use excerpts from many different documentaries which I have done for years, and documentaries by Tomek Wiśniewski. So it's a short 18-minute film. I show it to a few people, and they said it's very, very unusual and amazing, because hearing from 25 maybe elderly Polish people stories how much they miss living with Jews is something that you don't expect as a viewer who knows the subject. So this film is actually already edited. It just needs for the right time for premiering. So and then there is more films, obviously, and films which are waiting for funding. I started working on the film about Kazik Simcharotem, one of the fighters from Warsaw Ghetto. I have a lot of footage. I got very, very close. We're very friendly with Kazik in Jerusalem. We spend a lot of time, and in Poland, in Warsaw and Łódź. So it's another film which has to be finished one day.
Yeah, and I would like to show a clip from the film about the heritage, because I think it brings to life a very optimistic perspective of contemporary Poland and what's happening right now in Poland in regards to Jewish culture. So this is very interesting. So just a minute.
Can you imagine 20,000 people, open door concert by the most eminent Jewish musicians from all over the world. The concerts which lasts 7.5 hours non-stop, Jewish beautiful music in this so-called anti-Semitic Poland. And this is a victory of a festival.
How can we discount any sprouting of even if it's we say in Hebrew mutsal me'esh, the little thing rescued from the fire? Will it grow into the big thing? I don't know, but I celebrate what is happening and recognize it for what it is.
Okay, so I think this is a good place to stop. And thank you very much, Slawomir, for the interview and your films. And Madin, I think maybe it's a good time to move to the Q&A.
Can I say something before we go? Just because this clip is sort of like a background for the documentary. You don't see characters there. You only could see a few people, and there was actually Chuck Fishman taking pictures. And Chuck photography is a big part of this documentary too. So I just want this to be mentioned.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you both so much. And this is a great introduction, I think, to the next program as well. But in itself, such an interesting film is always an interesting way to communicate. And I think also the inclusion of animation now is something that really is inspirational. There are really just two questions that I found in the chat box. Interesting, they're connected to each other. One, if you have any recollection of the pogroms they wrote in 1968, if you have a recollection growing up in Poland. And the second question is about the repression in 81, if that's the reason why you left Poland. So these two questions kind of connect.
Yeah. Polish Jews who left in 1968 were a subject of another documentary which I did called The Peresniks. It is not, I would say the word pogrom for 1968 is the wrong word. There was a pogrom in Kielce in 1946 where 47 people died. In 1968, about 15,000 people were forced to leave Poland because Polish government decided that Jews are not welcomed anymore. They are supporting Israel after Six-Day War, and they should go. And people were given one-way passport. So I'm very familiar with this. Obviously, this is a subject of several of my films. The Peresniks from 2009 is about a Jewish school in Łódź, which was closed because everybody, all the students and teacher had to left Poland, most of them at least, big part. And the recent film is Still Life in Łódź, which plays right now in movie theaters in United States. It's a virtual screening. You can get information where it is played on the website, which is stilllifeinwatch.com. So this is another film which deals with this topic. So, what was the second question?
1981. If the reason why you left in 81 was because of what was happening, somebody wrote the repression.
This is a different story. You know, I did film about solidarity. I did film about a woman who was fired from shipyard in Gdańsk, and then when I was in the United States in November of 1981 to show the film at MoMA, the film was never sent out. It was actually arrested, was locked for 9 years. I practically couldn't go back because martial law was imposed in Poland 6 weeks later, on 13th of December of 1981. So I watched this film as it was shot in 35 millimeter film only 2 years ago, first time in my life.
Okay, well, Kelly Nates is with us today, and she from the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center, and she says, can you speak a little about films you did that you choose to do that were not purely Holocaust centered, like Saved by Deportation or Santa Rosa? What pulled you to those films?
There are usually different reasons why I start working on the film. Saved by Deportation is a very, very important film. I didn't believe at the beginning when my colleague Podgórski approached me and said, let's do a story about people who were sent to Siberia. And I said, but this will be a boring story. Nobody will be interested in watching it. But then, first of all, I said to myself, but this is my father's story. My father was sent to, not sent to Siberia, but he took a train from Drohobych, and that's how he saved his life with his mother. And they end up in Armenia. And the only people who survived from my family was my father and my grandmother, and the rest of the family end up in Belgium. So it was also my story. And then it took some time before I said, okay, Robert, let's do it. But it took 7 years to make this film because we couldn't get funding, because not everybody was eager to talk. And finally, we met a family of Sharp who decided to go with us to the places where they were sent to Siberia, to Chelyabinsk, then to Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and this is what made the film. Plus, Sharps were great characters and a lot of humor, which they brought to the film. That, so you always look for story, but then you also look for characters. If we wouldn't meet Sharps, we probably would never make a film. And then another film, this is Santa Rosa. It's about Polish refugees who end up in Mexico. This is another reason, this is the main reason why I'm here right now, because I discovered Mexico through this film. The same way as the first film, which is Anna Proletarian, brought him to the United States. This film, Santa Rosa, brought him to Mexico. And again, the story was shown to me by a colleague who was a producer of the film, and I found it fascinating because I never heard about this, and I never heard about this, and no one else practically except few historians heard the story.
Wow! Again, I'm fascinated. I'm sure Liat is more familiar with the whole process of filmmaking, but just the storytelling. As a storyteller, for me to tell a story, I have a group and I tell my story. With you, telling a story is broken into pieces and years and money. You need support. It's just incredible how you have to go in and out of these different stories all the time. Another question, someone asked, who was your favorite Polish director? And maybe I'll add on to that, what Polish directors maybe influenced you growing up as well?
I wouldn't say there was one Polish director who influenced me the most. I like Andrzej Wajda. Andrzej Wajda was one of my favorite feature director. Also Wojciech Has, who was also my professor at the film school. And for some reason, both of them did several films which dealt with the Jewish Polish subject. Andrzej Wajda did at least 5 or 6 films. Samson, Landscape After Battle, Promised Land, Korczak.
Right.
These were his films. Agnieszka Holland also was a great example with her film Europa, Europa, or in Darkness. I watched these films, but this is probably, if I would name two people, I would say Andrzej Wajda and Wojciech Has.
One more question, and there are a few questions in the chat, but one question that's interesting because this is the subject of Polish-Jewish relations through the lens of the camera. Someone is actually asking, okay, based on your life and films, what do you think are the perspectives for improved Polish-Jewish relations today?
What's the question? How to improve? Or
based on your life experience and making films, what do you think are the perspectives? What's the future of improved Polish-Jewish relations?
100 hours of conversation about this. I think what's happening now, what we see now is a crisis. I think it's a crisis of Polish-Jewish relationship because of the fact that we have a government which in Poland which allows the right wing, the nationalistic organizations to be visible, to be on front pages, on first, to be in media, to have the voice. Those voices which quite often are clearly anti-Semitic are not silenced. There is no, if they go to court, they are released. And at the same time, you have different people like Barbara Engelking or Jan Grabowski who write a book like The Night Without an End, and they suddenly have to go to court to apologize for some statements. So at this situation, which is today, I would say it's the lowest point of the Polish-Jewish relationship. We could hear the stories of what happened with this organization, that advice board at the Auschwitz Museum. Katarzyna Markusz, which is one of the journalists who deals with the subject. She was questioned by authority because she said that that dislike of Jews was widespread among Poles, and Polish complicity in the Holocaust is a historical fact. Just by saying things like this, you can be questioned in today's Poland. So I hope for the new government, I hope for wiser people, I hope for better education. We had this period 5-10 years ago. It felt like everything goes the right direction, and suddenly we have this dip today.
And that's how quickly it can change. I know from other experiences over the last 4 or 5 years that what you thought was going forward somehow goes backwards as well, which is unfortunate. Hopefully, your films will be making and are making an impact in Poland as well. There is one more question, because I'm an educator and we have an educator in the audience. She says that she teaches her eighth graders about the Poles during the war. She's asking if you think that, and of course the movie about talking about upstanders like Karski. She wants to know if Shtetl or Shimon's return would be appropriate for her 8th grade class. I don't know if you've had that kind of connection with educators with your films, but that would be interesting to know if she could.
Yeah, both films. I mean, Shtetl is not my film. It's Frontline, it's PBS film, but definitely. But it's 3 hours long film, so it would be very difficult for educators unless it is in part. But Shimon's Return, which I co-directed with Kat Karaszka. I have to mention that several of my films are co-directed. This film can be easily used for classrooms.
Wonderful.
My films are available from my website.
Right, I put a link to your website, and I put a link to your new book as well, which is available in Polish as well. And I also put a link. I also put a link for the next program with Classrooms Without Borders, where there will be a post-screening discussion about Still Life in Lodz that I watched again today. Fascinating film, and I think people will really enjoy taking part in that program as well. I want to thank Slawomir and Liat. You're up in the corner for me right now. I'd like to have you come back with us. There you are. I want to thank you both again. I think when Slawomir and I first talked, we talked, I would interview you. And as we continued to talk in that half-hour discussion, I said to myself, Liat, 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 Liat. I couldn't have thought of a better interviewer with all your experience. And I just think it was a great interview to have you both together. Two more introductions. Yeah, I have to say that this program is the ultimate COVID experience. I met Slawomir through a virtual mutual friend, and Liat, I've read your books, but we never met. So this has been an opportunity to make these connections with friends that I see in the audience as well. So again, I want to thank you. And if you look in the chat, you can also see people are saying thank you very much for the films. And I think with that, we'll say shalom and toda. Thank you, and hope to see you guys in real life real soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.